Welcome, everybody, to a new analysis of Tradomics. My name is Darian. In this episode, we're going to have a focus on five most prominent green energy stocks. As usual, I mind you that this analysis takes place once every month. So if you want to get notified as soon as possible regarding this video, and not only that, you can subscribe to our channel by clicking on the bell, subscribe it. We have as a main focus in this channel mostly the US stocks, but of course we go even beyond that because we analyze US indexes. This will be the next episode. Then we have Swiss stocks, given that Tradomics is based in Switzerland, and we have also the Italian stocks and also the Chinese indexes. So, if you want to have, for example, an analysis, or you are interested in a stock that doesn't appear here on a regular basis, because every time we analyze the videos and we keep track of our stocks on a regular basis, you can write an email to tradomica@gmail.com if you wanted to get some ad hoc analysis for you. So let's start immediately with Enphase Energy. The format of this channel is that I always leave intentionally the arrows according to the previous analysis that I do, because it gives the possibility to appreciate the methodology, and of course it's also a challenge for me to show you which kind of direction I give to the price based on a statistical methodology and based on a statistical forecast, so then you can at every point in time verify whether I was saying something right or something wrong according to statistics. So in this case, in the last video for Enphase Energy, I was forecasting more potential upside for the price because from this top here, we add a T plus 3, and especially from this top here, we add a T plus 1, a T plus 2. T plus 1 is bi-weekly cycle, and the duration is encompassed between 13 to 22 days, and the T plus 2 is a monthly cycle that is encompassed between 24 and 44 days. So in this particular situation, we have add the evidence that from this top here, we add the minimum duration to have or to start a T plus 1 or T plus 2. And given that this structure was basically attached to this first part of cycle, I was forecasting more potential upside because I was expecting to have at the closing of the T plus 3 with this shape. Now, this thing didn't happen, and didn't happen because we have always to take into consideration the hybrid cycles. So the hybrid cycles are cycles that are encompassed between, in this case, a T plus 2 hybrid cycle between a T plus 2 and a T plus 3. So T plus 2 and T plus 3 are a regular duration of cycles, but a T plus 2 is basically an hybrid. So it's a duration that happens in between. And as you can see here in the chart, the T plus 2 hybrid cycles, but in general, the hybrid cycles do not appear very often. But in this case, if we gauge the total duration from the top that was done on the 9th of December 2024 until the top that was done on the 19th of February 2025, we have a total duration of 47 bars. And 47 bars is actually a T plus 2 hybrid cycle. So in this particular um, uh, point here, we have to update the chart as following. The cycle that took place, the upward cycle that took place from the top of the 9th of December until here, 19th of February, is a T plus 2 hybrid cycle. And from the top of the 19th of February started something else. So here, I'm gonna just update the chart as following by writing T plus 2 hybrid upward cycle. And you see clearly that from this top here, we started a new, at least T plus 2 with first strong impulse to the downside. Now, this first impulse to the downside went lower this low, which was a critical swing to understand the segmentation of the downward cycle. We'll talk about it in a moment. And the impulse to the downside turned the T plus 2 downward cycle into a negative cycle. And we talk about negative cycles when um, the candles that are developing during the duration of the cycle breaks, in this case, break down the swing from which the cycle started. And actually, we have a low that was lower compared to the low from which the cycle started. And now, if we gauge the duration from the first low to the second low, we have a total duration of 27 bars. So this one was a negative T plus 2 cycle. It ended here, and now we are seeing another structure. And the strength of this new cycles is quite fable, I would say, because we didn't even reach this first target. But still, we have to take in consideration that there is a certain amount of candles above this low. Particularly, we have 18 bars. So from this low here, we have the beginning of at least a T plus 2 or a T plus 3. Now we have to find out in the next weeks whether this um, swing will be the beginning of something that is more T plus 3 or T plus 4, because even here we were expecting a new T plus 5, T plus 4, T plus 5. But considering that this downward cycle has done the first 6 month cycle, then we have had another 6 month cycle, then here we have a 3 month cycle, this T plus 5 is not over yet. The duration actually is 325 bars. We have still time to have 339 bars. So eventually they can even, in the next week, if they want, give the last impulse to the downside to close the T plus 5. But you have always to remember that after a T plus 5, either we're going to have a new T plus 5 or we can have a Bayet tongue. And the Bayet tongue between a T plus 5 and another T plus 5 is a monthly downward cycle. So eventually, after the standard duration, which is in this case 325 days, they can even attach another T plus 2, duration 24 up to 44 days, still to the downside, and then start a new T plus 5. And when a T plus 5 started, then we have at least 3-4 months to the downside, to the upside, sorry, to develop the cycle itself. Okay, so be really careful in the next month that we might have a situation in which we have a false start to the upside, so or a bounce out of a dead cat, if you will, and we have to be careful if the cycle will not lose power from the first second week of the next month, so in April, and draw a Bayet tongue here. Okay, so that's the risk that I see on Enphase energy, even if the duration of the T plus 5, standard duration of the T plus 5 is over. So merely from a statistics perspective, without the Bayet tongue, then from this low I would expect at least the start of a new T plus 5. But in order to start a new T plus 5, the price at least has to go over this swing at $78.26 in the next month or more. Okay, so that's the situation I have on Enphase Energy, and now we move to the next one. On first solar, during the last analysis, I was flagging up this swing as a critical swing to eventually have a new bounce to the upside. And given that I was also flagging that this weekly downward cycle was negative because this candle here on the 21st of February broke up the swing from which the weekly cycle started, we had actually what? The prosecution to the downside. And this arrow was also flagging that possibility. So here the analysis was rather correct. and we had the continuation of the downtrend. Now we can update the chart as usual from this top, in which we define at the beginning of a 3 month cycle, T plus 3. We have at the closing on this top of what, 29 bars. So not just a T plus 1. I was conservative during the last analysis because I wanted to see also the development, the further development on the cycle. But here we can definitely put a monthly upward cycle. And with the monthly upward cycle, you know that the beginning of the cycle is definitely to the downside to develop the cycle itself. Okay, so that's is the first thing or key message. The second key message is that this downward cycle here is definitely a negative downward cycle, and here I was about um, to see whether this could have been a T plus 2 or a T plus 3. So given that we have spent 78 bars, here I would say that this is a T plus 3. But if we look at this low here, let's see, this low is at 124.32 and this is 124.96. So this low is lower compared to this one. So here, let's see if we have the total duration. So here we have 90, 95, 94 bars. So 94 bars is a T plus 4. So here we don't have the duration of T plus 3 because 94 bars would be already a T plus 4. But here we have a Bayer tongue. So I'm not gonna go into much details regarding the rules of the T cycle analysis because you have the video introduction to the T cycle analysis. But whenever there is a Bayer tongue of a certain order of magnitude or a certain grade between two other cycles, then the Bayer tongue gives you already the grade of the cycle that is developed um, after. So given that here we add a T minus 1 Bayer tongue, a T minus 1 is connecting a T plus 2 with another T plus 2. So I would rather segment the chart as first T plus 2, second T plus 2, third T plus 2, and fourth T plus 2. So now here we have 160 bars from this T plus 4. So this T plus 4 is reaching almost the maximum duration. We have another week, 168 days to eventually have another impulse to the downside because this T plus 4 is completely negative. So the first key message is that we might continue to go down beginning of next week. But if we gauge the duration of this T plus 5, we have now 344 bars. So 344 bars is more than a duration, a standard duration 339. So here you have to be aware that potentially we have a Bayer tongue that is connecting a T plus 5 with another T plus 5. But the Bayer tongue is a three grades difference between a T plus 5 and a T plus 5. So we need a T plus 2. And if there is a Bayer tongue, we have time at least to continue falling until the 4th of April 2025 up to 44 bars. So here we can go even really close to the earnings release, and then we can continue falling until end of the month, so end of April. So be really careful. We have still room to continue the downtrend until the 5th of May. 5th of May. So here, another important thing, and this is the last key message I leave on the first solar, is that here on this swing we might have a Bayer tongue. So considering that is all negative, so all the cycles are negative and we have seen it, so we have a series of cycle negative, then we have still time to proceed to the downside. Okay, so that the situation I have on first solar. So more probabilities to continue the downtrend until for the first and second week of April, but we can even stretch the duration until the earning release. We have a T+5 that is negative, and at the moment there are no signs of reversal. So in this particular case, as a consequence, it's not savvy to open long position for the time being. So which means the week that is coming and even the second week of April. On Nextera energy, the last analysis was correct. Actually, I was forecasting more uptrend until the first resistance here with the moving average 200, and this is what happened. Now we can remove the arrow, and here we have to analyze what has happened, because from this top that happened on the 10th of March, we have had a considerable retracement. And this retracement went over the first checkpoint here and the second checkpoint here. So first of all, let's analyze the upward cycles. From the top, in which here I have the 3 months cycle, we have had a duration of 29 days. So here it's I would say it's fair to consider the top as the beginning of at least a monthly cycle. Now, considering the rules of the cycle analysis, this one is a positive cycle because the top from which this cycle ended was higher compared to the top from which the cycle started. And given that here we have the condition to have a T+3, and this is positive, the prosecution would be to have this, what has already happened, this first downtrend, but then a return to the absolute tops, because this would be a positive T+3. Now, this is the first way to interpret the chart. But the second way to interpret the chart, and this is something that makes the life harder for the analyst or for quantitative analysts, is that it's not given by fact that we need in any case a T+3, but what we can have is rather the beginning of a T+4 with segmentation is in first monthly cycle, second monthly cycle, and third monthly cycle. And the combination of all the three duration gives a T+4. So in this case, if we have the second pathway, we are not obliged to return back to the stop at 76.29 because this cycle is over and then we have a new cycle. But this cycle is not a positive cycle, it's a negative cycle, and therefore we don't have to return to the tops. And in this case, we might have, for example, a trend of this kind. Okay, so this is the big difference between the pathway A, let's say, and the pathway B. So how do we understand in which of the two cases we are? Well, we have to continuous monitoring the chart, and this is of course something that is logic. But we have to monitor the chart by looking at what? By looking at some swings, by looking at some checkpoints. The first checkpoint, which is extremely important, that would confirm the pathway B, so beginning of eventually a T+4 without returning back to the absolute tops here, is this swing. So if in the next days or weeks, the price will be further pushed down and will break this area at $66.98, then from this top here we will have not just a T+2 but a T+4, and this one will turn in a T+2 because it will be part, as I said, of this pathway. If we rather will not touch, will not break this area, but instead we will start returning back and going over this top, then here we will have the evidence that a new cycle will start. So a cycle that is a more than a weekly cycle. Potentially here we have 48, here we have 49 bars. So potentially we have already the minimum and sufficient condition to close a T+3 and start a new T+3. It's a bit seldom, though, that a cycle starts with the minimum duration. Okay, T+3 start from 48. We are at 49. So whenever there is a duration that is close to really the minimum or maximum duration, the seldom the cycle have the possibility, also the low the likelihood the cycle have to start. So generally speaking, they start within a median duration. Okay, there is more possibilities to have a median duration rather than a median duration rather than a minimum duration. So 49 bars here is really the minimum. By, let's say, by experience, I would consider more a tendency to have this shape, but it's not given by fact. So we have to monitor over the short term, really this swing at 72.09, and the second would be 73.68. So if we start going over this top and over this top, then 49 days will be already the minimum, and then we have a T+3. But if we go lower this low, then we have the pathway B. So beginning of something more than a T+2 from this top, and still the cycle will seek the tail to close the first T+3. And of course, the most important one is this swing, because if we go even lower this swing, then we have to make further consideration. But for the time being, let's not move too much into the future, but let's consider the swings that I have given to you. Okay, so these two for the uptrend and this one for the downtrend. Last thing I want to highlight on this stock is how many days have we spent for the T+5. So here we have 317 bars. And here we have 366 bars. So technically speaking, here we have the T+5 that is completed, and here we have too many bars to have a bear tongue. So the expectation is also not to go lower this low, okay? Because we need at least a certain amount of bars over this low to start a T+5, even if at the moment the strength of this new T+5 is not so high. Okay, so that's the situation we have on Nextera Energy. And now let's move to the next one. On Brookfield Renewable, the analysis was correct in the last video, so I was forecasting a bit of a downside and then a return to the absolute tops. And I was also flagging this top as an important swing to understand whether from this low here we have a T+4 or a T+5. You can see that with the candle that we have done recently, so the 24th of March, we went higher compared to this top. Therefore, here we can already thinking of a T+5, a yearly cycle ongoing. So I then update the chart as following. So from the top that we add here, the 21st of February, we have at not a weekly upward cycle, but we have at 20 bars a cycle, so a T plus 1. Okay, so here we have a T plus 1. From this top here, this was a positive cycle because the top in which it ended was higher compared to the top from which it started. We have not just a T plus 2, but we have a T plus 3 with a duration of 51 bars. So here, let's update the chart T plus 3. So we have from this yearly cycle T plus 5, the first T plus 3 and the second T plus 3. Okay, and now what are we facing up? So we have enough bars to close not just a T plus 3, but a T plus 4, 104 bars. So in the next weeks, you have to be aware that we have the development of a T plus 3, T plus 4, potentially, because we don't have yet the bus to say this is a T plus 3, T plus 4, but forecasting that we have already the minimum duration and we have start 1, 2, 3, 4 bars, all red ones, that went lower this low, we have already clear evidence that from this top at least we have a T plus 2. And if we have a T plus 2, we cannot return back to this absolute tops before a couple of weeks. But if we have a T plus 3, then we can not return back to the top at least for half of a month or an entire month. Okay, so we cannot have this shape immediately, but rather we have to extend the time to give the possibility of this T plus 3, T plus 4 to be developed. Okay, so this it's something that you have to be aware in order to manage correctly your position, whether this is long or short. The second thing is that from this low here until this low here, we have 28 bars, so we have completed a T plus 2 monthly cycle, downward cycle, and we are on the second monthly downward cycle that has reached a duration so far of 19 bars. So let me check also this downward cycle here. So here we have 8 bars, so we can put just a weekly cycle. So in order to close a T plus 2, we would need 24 bars at least. So here we can have a stretch of this tail of this kind for another week at least. So be careful that an T plus 2 might be already seeking the absolute lows in the next week and a half to close the cycle. And 24 bars, if we take a minimum duration, means that these lows can be sick up to the 4th of April. At least. At most, we can even go further with a median duration that would be 30 days. So 30 days means that we can further proceed to the downtrend until the 15th of April 2025. So, and this is something that it's highly probable, because if from here we have a T plus 3, T plus 4, then we still need further downtrend to proceed this cycle and to close the T plus 2. So until mid of April, we might have this situation. So then you have to be aware of this thing, okay? This is something that I think there are few channels, or probably no channels, that are saying these things in terms of time. So these, by looking at my channel, you have a competitive advantage to really manage the position, and especially not to go against the trend, because the main trend short term is to the downside, okay, for the reason I have explained. So let's see if we will have in the future the closing of the first T plus 3 and then bounce back to the upside. Of course, this is too soon to say that, but we have this situation. Okay, so potentially more downtrend with the first target here, the moving average 50, which is at $22.05. On Clearway energy analysis, definitely correct. So here I was expecting further uptrend because this T plus 2 was a positive one, and then that is what happened. So we have reached now a duration of 44 days. So here from these tops, you have to be careful that let's say the time to proceed to the uptrend is a little bit stretched. Unless, and here it's another technicism, the T plus 2 is finished here, and from this top here we have another cycle that in this case is a T plus 1 that will further push the price to the upside. With this candles we went over the stop, and here, given that now the push it's significantly strong and it went over the stop, here we have evidence that, as said during not just the last video but in the last two videos, here we have potentially the beginning of a T plus 5, and with the beginning of a T plus 5 we have more room to proceed to the uptrend. Okay, so having said that, let's clear up our um, our arrows. So here I confirm the T plus 2, and here I would put a question mark whether this is a T plus 1 or not. I'm seeing a lot of strengths to the upside, but be careful because we are in an overbought situation, and we have also now to understand at which point in time we are from the downward cycles. So the downward cycle, the first T plus 2 is something that I would rather put on that swing. So the swing on the 3rd of March 2025. And the second T plus 2 is reached a duration of 19 days. So in the next, potentially starting from the next week onwards, so I repeat, starting from next week onwards, we might seek the closing of this second T plus 2. And the closing of the second T plus 2 will require at least 3-4 days to the downside. But because this is a second T plus 2 of this beginning of a T plus 5, we might also seek the closing of the first T plus 3. And the closing of the T plus 3 will require a tail of a weekly negative downward cycle. So the wider the cycle, the longer will take to close it, and the longer we will expect downtrend. Okay, so be careful that from next week onwards we might face a situation of this kind rather than continuing going up, even because here we have reached the first target price and we're going to have a resistance. Okay, so I would expect a bit of retracement rather than proceeding to the uptrend straightforward. Okay, so in order to remember this thing, what I will also do is to first, let's remove this one and see here it's a weekly cycle, might be something more. Okay, so another consideration that I would do is that the first level to check whether we will start having first downtrend is this level of price here. This is our checkpoint, and it's at 29.63. And the second one, if we start having a tail that is going to close at T plus 3, is this one. Okay, so these are the two check marks. And another thing that I will leave you with is the Fibonacci retracement, just to have an idea of the target price of for a downtrend, short-term downtrend. It's at 29.07 and 28.11. Okay, so that's the thing. So beginning of a T plus 5, but short-term retracement expected for the different reasons I have just shared with you. So let's move to the last one. So regarding Bloom Energy Corporation, in the last video, I was forecasting more uptrend to complete this T plus 2 monthly cycle. Especially, I was also flagging the possibility here that the earnings release would have been a triggering point for further uptrend. So we have had this uptrend, but I keep saying that the analysis was rather wrong because I'm fully transparent with you. I don't care about the fact that I have to outstand here, but I stick to the reality as I'm a data driven analyst. And statistics speaks for me. So whenever there is correct analysis, I say it, as well as when it's wrong. So here we have an uptrend, but we conclude this uptrend with this top, and if we gauge then the duration from the relevant top here until this top here, we have 38 bars. So we have had a T plus 2 monthly cycle. But here I was saying that given that we have potentially we have a T plus 4, so the natural prosecution of the cycle would have been this. But you see that this is something that is not reflecting the reality, because here we have a T plus 2 and here another T plus 2. But this, especially this downtrend, is not confirming that this top is a T plus 4 positive. So what I'm gonna do is the following. So first of all, I have to swap here the T plus 2 and here the T plus 4, and from this top to this top there is another T plus 2. But what we were saying here is that considering that we have potentially a T plus 5 that is positive, after a first T plus 4 we have another T plus 4, but then the midterm scenario is to return back to the absolute top here at 29.83. There is also another way to interpret the chart, which is the following. From this T plus 5, so this was done on the February 2023, until here we have 327 bars. So close to the maximum duration of a T plus 5. But eventually we have also the possibility to have the T plus 5 close on this top at 209 bars, which is still enough duration for a T plus 5. But what it changes is that if we have the T plus 5 from this top here, here we have concluded the new T plus 5 or the second T plus 5, and therefore we can proceed back to the downtrend. If we have the T plus 5, which is not here, but it's here, then we are obliged to return to the absolute tops. And this is a situation that is not happening on the first pathway. So we have a critical difference. Now, the thing is that both on this top and on this top, we have the beginning of a T plus 5, because we have this swing, for example, that was broken, and we have also the minimum duration of the candles to have a T plus 5. But also in this case, we have the same. We have a certain amount of candle below this top, and we have broken this wing and this one also. So we have two similar situations for the beginning of a T plus 5, but with an opposite outcome. So what can we do then? Um, we have, as always, to look at the other flip of the coin, which are the index cycles or the downward cycles. So considering that from here we have the beginning of a T plus 5, and here we have no doubt that there is a new T plus 5, so we don't have a similar situation before, but we have this one, but of course this is lower compared to this one, and this is the absolute low. And this is already something in our favor to facilitate the analysis. From this low here until here, we have 275 bars, which means that we are close to the maximum duration, which is 339 days. We still have 50 days to go, but it's more than a median duration. Now, the thing is that we have the first T plus 4, and we're going to have another T plus 4 here that is divided in the first T plus 3, and now we are on the second T plus 3. Now, the thing is that this candle is really close to the low of this one of the 28th of January. This low is at 19.82 and this low is at 20.03. Considering the high volatility that this stock has, if we're gonna break this low here in the next week, then we might further see downtrend. And the downtrend, the first target will be moving average 200. Especially if here we have the first T plus 2 and then we are on a second T plus 2. And this second T plus 2 has reached a duration of 19 days. So it's not the minimum duration of a T plus 2. So I would say that you have to be careful now on this stock, that we might see potentially further downtrend unless we will not be able to really in the next week um, make an interesting swing and return in an area which is this one at around 24 23 $24. Okay, but I would see more downtrend, especially because we have broken this swing here, which was at 20.25. Here we are at 20.03, and this is already a sign that we might expect further downtrend. This is over the short term. Once we're gonna eventually finish approximately here in the moving average 200, then we will have all the conditions to close what? To close a T plus 5, because now we are on this particular point in time where we can close the T plus 5. And if we close the T plus 5 and then a new T plus 5 will begin, here we still have quite a lot of time to have this shape. We have 168 days. So let's see whether in the midterm, and we will analyze the stock every month. Uh, let's see if by September we will have this shape to return back to the absolute tops. Okay. So this is more on the mid-term scenario. This is more on the short-term scenario, given that we have seen this downtrend since 20th of March 2025. So that is the situation. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you like it, feel free to give me a like and subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching, and see you to the next episode.